on this story. Lindsay?
Well, Peter, as you know, baseball season starts just a few days from now. And the question lawmakers had for Major League Baseball, cable and satellite companies is how are they going to balance their business interests with the interests of sports fans? Earlier today, Senator John Kerry expressed some serious concerns about the $700 million deal that could make Major League Baseball's extra innings package the exclusive domain of DirecTV's satellite service. Right now, the service allows fans to watch out-of-market games on cable or satellite for a premium fee. Major League Baseball says it's given DirecTV's competitors every opportunity to come up with a matching offer, but so far a deal has not been reached. MLB says the deal will offer a cheaper subscription broadband option instead.
This is not a matter of fans being unable to view Major League Baseball's out-of-market games. It is a matter of some fans not being able to watch those games on a particular delivery system.
EchoStar's president told lawmakers consumers are getting a raw deal because even if they decided to switch over to DirecTV, in many cases it would mean a 33% rate increase over what they pay now for the very same service.
For Major League Baseball to reach into consumers' pockets and suggest this is a reasonable choice is not only disrespectful, but clearly points out Major League Baseball has, in this instance, relegated themselves to a well-compensated sales agent for DirecTV.
Now, lawmakers like Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania on the committee warned Major League Baseball and the cable and satellite companies to figure out this deal on their own or risk having Congress get involved and possibly take away their congressionally mandated antitrust exemption, which, Peter, as you know, is so crucial to the baseball organizations doing business.
Very crucial to the baseball business. And opening day just a couple days away. Lindsay Aaron, thanks very much. And as Lindsay mentioned, Massachusetts Senator John Kerry, noted Boston Red Sox fan as well, he held today's hearing. I spoke with him earlier and asked him what's wrong with DirecTV's deal with baseball since the company offered the highest bid.
In a strict sense, they cut an exclusive deal on the basis of the money and the bidding, yes. But in a larger sense, there's a public interest here and a broad-based fan interest across America. If people today have access to games through extra innings and all of a sudden they're going to be cut out, does that work in the best interests of the fan base of baseball and for the consumer? And I believe that it's troubling.
Were you satisfied with the answers you heard today from Major League Baseball?
I thought we heard honest answers today. I think people sort of described their sides of the deal. What struck me was really how not very far apart they are. There ought to be a way to be able to try to get this together. I felt that Major League Baseball was sincere in its offer to try to do that. I certainly understand the economic interests that are driving this. What I'd like to see everybody do is sort of, be willing to compromise for fans. You got people down in Arizona, in Florida, other parts of the country, who follow the teams in the places where they live for a long time in their life or where they may have a long affiliation. And suddenly have a whole bunch of those folks lose access to the ability to watch those games, I think would be bad for baseball.
But isn't this really a business decision, sir? Is this something where Congress can get involved here and essentially micromanage what is largely a business dispute?
Well, we're not trying to micromanage it, number one. Number two, there are public interests at stake. The American taxpayer has put $3.9 billion into baseball-only stadiums. And the fact is there's an antitrust provision that allows baseball and other sports, in some cases, on occasion for media purposes, to negotiate as a block. That's enormous market power. If that market power is misused, Congress has an appropriate role of oversight, and that's what we're doing here. I don't have a dog in the fight in terms of one economic interest versus another, but I do want to fight for the consumer, for the average fan in America, for people who love to follow their home team even when they're not at home. And I think to not have that available to the widest possible audience would be unfortunate. So I hope we can balance both interests. People can make money, and they can do it in a way that grows the fan base and sort of pays respect to baseball's place in the American life.
As you noted today at the hearing, we're just a couple days away from opening day. As you left that hearing today, what's your level of optimism that these parties can come to some agreement that does allow more Americans to be able to watch these out-of-market games? And if they're not able to reach a deal by opening day, what are you prepared to do?
Well, I'm optimistic that they have the ability to do it. I'm confident they can if there's a will on both sides to try to find the means. The test will be, is there really a will to do it? And I can't speak to that. They're going to have to decide that if they get together and talk seriously about it. And then we'll have to wait and see what happens. If they don't do it, I think fan reaction will be fairly intense, and I think, you're going to have a call for us to sort of take a look at certainly how it works and whether or not people are, in fact, unfairly shut out in a way that does a disservice to the larger public interest regarding baseball.
What about the larger issue of baseball's antitrust exemption? There were some suggestions today perhaps Congress would be willing to revisit that. What's your own view on that?
I don't want to get into idle threats and throwing things around at this point in time. I think it's better to keep this thing on an even keel. I thought there was a good airing today of the different view of what this offering really is and of how it affects people. And perhaps now, some of the resistance that sometimes builds up in negotiating in the process, that can be taken away and people can kind of look fresh again at how to get this deal done. I'm confident it could be if the will is there, and the test will be whether or not that will is present.
Sir, if I could, I want to change gears and ask you about the Iraq situation. Of course, the emergency supplemental on the floor this week in the U.S. Senate. First of all, I wanted to ask you, do you see any sign that General Petraeus is having success on the ground in Iraq?
Well, I think it's, first of all, much too early to make a judgment about something that isn't even fully in place, number one. But number two, even if it does make a difference in terms of the short-term security on the ground in Baghdad, for instance, it doesn't resolve the larger questions. And it also doesn't tell you whether or not the militias are simply withdrawing temporarily from the field of battle, so to speak, in order to kind of let time go by and then test where the weaknesses are in this deployment. I personally believe that unless you resolve the fundamental stakeholder interests of who is going to, deal with the federalism, how are the oil revenues really going to be divided? They have a deal, but they don't have a deal. I mean, these things have got to be resolved. And unless the fundamental differences between Shia and Sunni that they're fighting over are adequately addressed, no deployment in its current form or any other form is going to change what's happening in Iraq.
The Senate, as I mentioned, considering the emergency supplemental, the president promising to veto anything that includes conditions on military operations. Is there a middle ground here? What do you think this supplemental is going to look like in the end?
I can't tell you. I don't think there's a middle ground on the issue of whether or not we ought to set a date. I mean, either you're going to set a date or you're not, unless the president comes up with a series of benchmarks and a very clear restatement of American policy that meets the intention of the Congress. But I'm not sure I see that happening. I just see the same old stubborn resistance that says, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do what we're doing. And what they've been doing hasn't worked for 4 years. We're now in the 5th year. I don't think it's too much to ask that by the beginning of the 6th year, or a year from now, the Iraqis should be taking over the full security and American forces should be drawing down. It seems to me that that's a recognition of the realities on the ground. Our troops were never sent there to resolve the differences of a civil war. They're in the middle of a civil war. They should be redeployed, and the Iraqis should be resolving those differences and forced to do so.
Senator John Kerry speaking with me earlier here on Money in Politics. A White House already under fire on several fronts got some more bad news today. Press Secretary Tony Snow's colon cancer has returned. The disease has metastasized and spread to his liver, according to Snow's deputy, Dana Perino. President Bush told reporters this morning that Snow called him to share the news.
My